Today on the newscast, the White House says one thing and the American people say another. A stunning new poll shows overwhelming American support for a Rafah offensive by the Israel Defense Forces. We've got those numbers for you, plus a prophetic call to action by a Christian pastor when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people. You won't want to miss that, folks. It's coming up next. Folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. We've been detailing for you here over really the past few months on the newscast how the Biden administration is adamantly opposed to any Israeli offensive in Rafah. Now, Joe Biden drove that message home to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once again on Sunday when the two leaders talked by phone. And the gist of it, folks, is this. The Biden administration, it seems, essentially opposes any Israeli operation in Rafah. And why is that so important? Well, Rafah is really the last stand for Hamas. 4 fully functioning Hamas battalions are in Rafah right now. The IDF has wiped out some 18 Hamas battalions, but again, the last 4 are in Rafah. Not only that, Israel suspects that Hamas leaders are also hiding out in Rafah. And then, of course, the hostages. 130 has been the number. Most likely, sadly, not all of them are alive, but at any rate, a good amount of Israeli hostages remain in Gaza, and some most likely are in Rafah. So it seems obvious to you, perhaps, and certainly to me, that Israel needs to go into Rafah to finish the stated goal of both the political and military leadership of crushing Hamas once and for all, so that Hamas never poses any sort of threat to Israel ever again. And yet, the Biden administration, Western leaders, and essentially much of the world opposes any Rafah offensive by Israel, which again would leave, if Rafah is left alone, Hamas would be alive to fight another day. That should be a non-starter for Israel. And apparently, folks, it's a non-starter for the American people. A stunning new poll. I say it's stunning because this poll was not commissioned by Fox News or some conservative news outlet. No, this was a Harvard, as in Harvard University, not exactly a right-wing pro-Israel bastion, a Harvard Capps Harris poll showing that 4 out of 5 Americans, 80%, support Israel's operation in Gaza to crush Hamas. Not only that, even more interesting, 72% of all Americans, according to this Harvard University poll, support an Israeli invasion, an Israeli operation in Rafah. So what we see here, folks, if this poll is any indication, and again, this is Harvard, Harris, this is not a conservative outlet, needless to say. What we see here, number one, is that the American people and the Biden administration are completely at odds on this issue. Because again, Joe Biden is trying to pull out all the stops to pressure Bibi to not go into Rafah, to the point where Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, has been dangling normalization with Saudi Arabia before Netanyahu, as in, look, if you don't go into Rafah, perhaps you can have a peace deal with the Saudis, and it goes on. So disconnect there clearly between the American people and Biden. And number 2, a disconnect, and this is very important, folks, between the vast majority of the American people, some would call them the silent majority, and the rabble-rousing radical protesters who are besieging American college campuses from coast to coast right now, pushing an evil, demonic, I don't use that word lightly, demonic anti-Semitic agenda at places like Yale University, Columbia University, fellow Ivy League institutions, by the way, to Harvard, which commissioned this poll I'm talking about. But from coast to coast, we've seen this, UCLA, other places. It is a wicked, I don't use that word lightly, again, folks, a wicked movement that glorifies genocide, homicidal terrorist in the form of Hamas, and anti-Semitism, pure, unadulterated, unfiltered, in your face. That's what these college campus protests are all about. And there are apparently no adults in the room at these colleges to rein in these radical students. Not only rein them in, but kick them out of school, take their financial aid away, and allow the police to do what they need to do to break up these rabidly anti-Semitic protests. But the good news is the vast majority of American people still, although the loudest voices in the room seem to be the protesters on the streets and the Biden administration, I'm heartened by this poll. that the majority of American people don't see it that way and still stand with Israel. And that was the topic of my interview with Pastor Troy Brewer. Now, Troy Brewer Ministry is doing great work around the world on Israel, on human trafficking. Pastor Troy's been at the forefront on these issues. He's the pastor of Open Door Church right here in Texas. And I sat down with him recently to discuss the importance, which goes without saying, I'd say the necessity right now for Christians, for followers of Jesus, to stand with Israel and the Jewish people for such a time as this, the prophetic implications of it, and the fact that if we don't do it, at least in the natural right now, if Bible-believing Christians don't step up and speak out against this anti-Semitic madness and the anti-Israel wave, then really no one else is going to do it. And we, as believers, have a biblical mandate to do it. By the way, this clip is from the Stakelbeck Tonight Show. Now, if you like this clip, you want to see more like it, tune in every night, Monday through Friday. It's our brand new show we just launched last month. It's called Stakelbeck Tonight, a nightly show on TBN, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air every night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Stakelbeck Tonight. Check it out. My interview with Pastor Troy Brewer. Pastor Troy, great to have you with us. Hey, we were talking off camera, and you basically said when it comes to anti-Semitism right now, which is exploding like a virus here in the United States, if we as followers of Jesus, as Christians, don't step up and take the lead in fighting this, no one else is going to do it. No one else is coming. Talk more about that, the importance of us as Christians of stepping up and shining light in the darkness.
Well, historically, here in the United States of America, there was a time that black students were actually integrated with the white students, and the black students were terribly persecuted. So how did America respond? We sent in the National Guard to protect them and to make sure that the integration went the way that it was supposed to go. Today, on America's campuses, we see these Jewish children, these Jewish young people are being persecuted and oppressed and slandered, and horrible things are happening on these campuses. And where is the National Guard? Where is the state police? Where is that? They're nowhere to be seen. So whenever I see that, I look at that and I say, if the church doesn't step up to protect and to stand with the Jewish people, there's nobody else coming. The institutions that we've always trusted to do that are no longer doing that.
This is not flesh and blood that the Jews and Christians are battling against right now.
No, it's not. This goes back all the way to the very beginning of the Jewish people, that there's been time and time again that there's been a decree from a nation to just wipe them out. Their bloodline is offensive to demonic forces. Like, if you hate a Jewish person, you don't hate them because of their race. They're every color you can imagine. That bloodline contains the DNA of the promised Messiah. Now, we know him to be Yeshua. We know him to be King Jesus, and we love him. That's not yet been revealed to Israel, but the day is coming that it will. So in the meantime, there are demonic forces and nefarious forces within governments of the world to actually wipe them out, and we cannot stand for it.
Pastor Troy, we see this on college campuses here in the United States, calling for genocide against Israel, the Jewish state. Talk about how hatred of the nation state of Israel is pretty much hatred of the Jews writ large.
It is. The land, the people, and the nation are one, okay? And the Lord said that's actually God's design, by the way. Many of us, including pastors, have bought into the lie that all this aggression against the Jewish people is born out of oppression. No, it is not. It's not born out of oppression. It's born out of an ancient hatred towards the Jewish people. And so the idea that Israel cannot defend itself, the idea that Jewish people cannot have a voice, that they cannot have a place, that's straight up Nazism. Yeah. And certainly the body of Jesus has no place in hooking up with that spirit.
Yeah, and great point there. I mean, I've called Hamas modern-day Nazis. And by the way, you and I were talking before we started, Pastor Troy. You've got a verse there from Deuteronomy. It's right in front of you. Do you mind sharing that with everyone, the significance of that?
So every year, Eric, we fast and pray at the beginning of the Jewish calendar year and also the beginning of the Gregorian calendar year. And we looked up what would be, if it is the year 5784, what would be the 5,784th verse in the Bible? And we found it. And it's Deuteronomy 32, verse 25. And this describes October 7th perfectly. In the street, the sword will make them childless. In their homes, terror will reign. The young men and the young women will perish, the infants and those with gray hair. Deuteronomy 32, verse 25.
That's October 7th, word for word. And to see Iranian missiles flying over the Temple Mount where Jesus taught and chased out the money changers, that's an image I can't shake. So as Israel moves into these unprecedented challenges, the time of Jacob's trouble, what more can we do as the body of Christ?
I can say, number one, that all of us as Christians, we need to support the Messianic church that is actually in Israel. And they are doing the kingdom stuff. Like, we turned all of our churches into bomb shelters, and the additional bomb shelters, feeding people, getting the equipment, doing the kingdom stuff. I would just say it's important to support the body of Jesus that is there.
Yeah, and when anti-Semitism rears its ugly head here in the U.S., how do we respond?
Not only are they now saying death to Israel, but the same people are now beginning to chant death to America. Well, that's no surprise to me. Yeah. These are not our friends that are sadly mistaken. These are our enemies. And the Bible talks a lot about nations that are either goat or sheep nations, and Jesus is the one that divides them. I'd say this to all of our Christian friends watching right now. Are you a goat Christian or are you a sheep Christian? And the definition of that is, did you stand with Israel?
It's the question of our times. Pastor Troy Brewer, can't thank you enough. Thanks for all you're doing on this. God bless you. Great to have you. Powerful insights there from Pastor Troy Brewer. Again, folks, check out Troy Brewer Ministries. And if you're here in Texas, Open Door Church is a great place. Pastor Troy leads that church. And if you have not subscribed to the Watchman Newscast, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Hey, we're watching all of these events unfolding right now in the world's most volatile and chaotic region very closely, needless to say, and breaking down why it impacts you no matter where you live. Also, a quick reminder, check out Stakelbeck tonight, every night on TBN, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A lot going on, folks, and that's exactly the way we like it, because we've got work to do, kingdom work to do, in these tumultuous yet prophetic Bible times that we are living in right now. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.